Okay, I think we're live. So for those watching this YouTube video, hang out for a minute. We're going to do a little housekeeping. I'm going to post a link to the Telegram channel and in the agenda.
Sounds good.
There we go. Wait, what did I just... There we go. Okay. Okay, I think we're good to go. Oh, wait, let me put the link in the agenda. All right, welcome everybody to the Permissionless Software Foundation Technical Steering Committee meeting. I'm Chris Troutner, founder of the PSF and fullstack.cash. Let's just go around and give a brief introduction. David, you want to start?
Sure. Well, I'll go second because you just did yourself. I'm David R. Allen, and I do business development for the Permissionless Software Foundation.
Stoyan, go ahead.
My name is Stoyan Zhikov, and I'm working on the JavaScript libraries for the PSF, for the foundation.
Nice. Go ahead, Joey.
Hi, yeah, I'm Joey King. I'm a web developer with Bitcoin ABC, and I'm currently working on CashTab as well as some web components for CashTab that uses Bch API for the backend.
Nice, thanks, guys. Well, with that, let's dive right into the agenda. There we go. All right. So the big things on the agenda today is changes to Bch API. There's been a lot of changes. First of all, we had announced about a month ago that we were going to be deprecating the v3 branch. So when you instantiate Bch.js, the JavaScript library, by default it will use the v4 branch. So people who don't understand what I'm saying can safely ignore what I'm saying. But for businesses who need more fine-grained control over Bch API or Bch.js and how it's instantiated, this is important. So the v3 route was an older route. Probably about 4 months ago, we created the v4 route because there was some breaking changes. So with the API, what we try to do is it's okay to add new features, but we try not to affect backwards compatibility. And so whenever we need to make a change that would negatively affect backwards compatibility, we create a new version. So with v3 deprecated, v4 is the only route at this moment. And that gives everybody, that's kind of like the final push to get everybody on the v4 route. And then we'll probably in a couple weeks start a new v5 route for sort of experimental features. And so v4 will be the main sort of API route that Bch.js will use and that everybody should be using. And we'll try and essentially freeze it and only add new features going forward. And so one of these things that lets us do is deprecate the blockbook indexer, which it's an indexer like Electromex or Fulcrum, except it takes about 4 times the footprint. And so that's why I'm really looking forward to being able to deprecate blockbook and just use Electromex as our only indexer. So that's the first item and the second item. The more salient things is there's this new user object that, so Joey, you and I had a conversation a couple meetings ago about this trade-off between abstraction and rate limits, where it's like in order to provide a good user experience, we want to provide these high levels of extraction, like utxo.get call in BCH.js is a good example. You give it an address, and it gives you back another object that has all the UTXOs sorted by like normal Bitcoin Cash, and then like SLP tokens, and including minting batons are sorted from regular tokens, and then NFTs. And so the group and the NFT and the minting batons, those are all separated into different arrays. And so that's highly convenient for a wallet developer to make one call and to get all these really nice hydrated and sorted UTXOs. But what actually happens behind the scenes is this incredibly elaborate chain of API calls. And so it's a very API heavy call, and I've seen over and over and over again this repeating thing where if you don't if you give people the ability to abuse an API call, they will. And so rate limits is how you reel this in and keep everything fair. And the problem that I've been having up to this point, that I've been sort of letting things naturally resolve themselves, is that these internal API calls are they're API heavy. They're much heavier. They require many more resources than like just, say getting information on a single raw transaction from a full node. That's a pretty simple, quick API call. And so the way I'm solving that, and so what the problem that happened was that this hydrate UTXO call is really popular. It's behind the scenes on the UTXO get. It works on the web wallet. Anytime you're basically working with tokens, you're going to make this call, and it's really API heavy. And what I was seeing is that there was an increase in usage of that call, and it started affecting the ability of people just using the web wallet, just normal users. Their tokens weren't loading. And what was happening under the hood is we added these internal rate limits. So when Hydrate UTXO makes all these rapid internal rate limits, it's still a rate limit tracker there, and it's set at 1,000 requests per minute. I thought that would be pretty high, but we were consistently hitting those limits. And because I wasn't assigning the rate limits like on a per IP address like basis, like everyone was getting the same rate limit. And so these heavy users were affecting all the normal users. And so I pushed a pretty fast change, which can be seen here is the documentation for BCH.js and the token UTXO details call. So the call I was just talking about is this hydrate UTXOs call. And that is really just a wrapper. You call that, and then BCH API calls token UTXO details. And what it's doing is it's passing this user object, which contains like your IP address. And if you passed in a JOT token, that would come along for the ride too. So what I can do now is, even though BCH API is making all these internal calls, it's still tracking the rate limits per user, really per IP address. And so I can apply the normal rate limits, even though the calls are, whether they're internal or external, the same rate limits get applied to the same user. So what this did is the normal users who just casually use the web wallet, it restored their, good user experience. They're no longer being impacted by the heavy users, and it fairly applied rate limits to the heavy users. And of course, this change was not in the V3 route, so I had to deprecate that V3 route a little sooner than the rest of the route. But anyways, this is the big change. This is I'm pretty happy with this trade-off that I've made, in that everyone's getting the rate limits applied to them fairly, whether you're making internal calls or external calls. And it's just something to be mindful of, because anybody who's using the public fullstack.cash BCH API who's making heavy calls to hydrate UTXO, they're going to start to see rate limits a lot more. And the way that's going to manifest itself is you'll get UTXOs with a null value. The is valid will be null, which means like you hit your rate limit, you weren't able to verify that this UTXO is of invalid or valid token UTXO, so you should not spend it. And if you're using that UTXO.get call in BCH.js, all these UTXOs that hit the null will just automatically go into that null array. And so you can safely, your wallet can safely ignore them. And I think that I'm probably going to get some pushback on this user experience, but mechanically, in terms of scaling and keeping things fair, this is the best solution that I've been able to come up with, and I'm planning to go forward with it. Did that make sense to you guys? Are you lost? Are you understanding the trade-off that I'm trying to make?
Yes.
Okay. So Joey, you're going to see the same problem if SLP tokens on the ABC chain take off. Like these are the same problems that you're going to wrestle with, and it's probably a ways out for you. But this is sort of how I'm dealing with it. We'll see how it works. I'll adapt if it turns out to not be a good solution. But yeah, like what's so nice about the ABC chain is you guys don't have to worry about these scaling issues. And because it's not only this, it's also, SLPDBs are getting more expensive to run. And so there's just a lot of sort of leaky holes in terms of scaling with SLPDB. And so the best solution I can come up with is just to sort of plan for a messy reality where, if you have a wallet with a lot of tokens, they might not get all validated. And so the best thing that I can do at that point is just throw them into a null array and like have the wallet ignore them, so that at least you're not in any danger of burning the tokens.
Right.
So let's see. I talked about, so that user object, another neat thing that I added to token UTXO details, going back to this documentation. So it's an optional input, and I think I have an example. Yeah, right here. And did I add it to hydrate UTXOs? Yeah. So hydrate UTXOs is the call that most people are going to make when they're using this call. And so what you can do is add this UTXO delay. And what it does is when you call this, it basically, you give it an address. And what it's going to do is it's going to pull down all the UTXOs associated with this address from the indexer. And then it's going to go through each UTXO and try and hydrate it with token information, or invalidate it, ensure that it's not a token UTXO and you can safely spend it as a regular Bitcoin Cash coin. And so every time it processes a UTXO, that counts against your rate limit. And so by passing in this delay, you can tell it, you can add an artificial delay. You can tell it to, wait. In this case, it would be waiting 100 milliseconds between each UTXO call, hydrating each UTXO. And I just recently did the token. I was really hitting these rate limits because I try and eat my own dog food. I even though I could give myself like infinite rate limits, I try and run at the same 100 requests per minute rate limit that you would pay for a $15 a month tier on fullstack.cash. And so I was running this like token airdrop program that is just very API intensive. And so I was able to successfully run it at the 100 RPM tier by introducing this delay. And so if people are, I'm going to start offering higher tier. In fact, I'm probably going to drop the price of the 100 RPM tier down to like, I don't know, maybe $5 and $5 to $10. And then I'll offer another like 300 and then 500 and then 1,000 RPM tiers at higher prices. And but so for people who are using the free tier at 20 RPM or want to buy like that first step up to 100 RPM and they're bumping up against rate limits, this is a really good way to continue to operate within the scope of a lower rate limit tier. And so I'm just continuing that work. That's really like for the next couple weeks. I plan on making a pretty big refactor to the way rate limits are done in Bch API. I'm going to, so there's really 4 use cases here that I have to target. The first is users that are just running Bch API locally and they don't want to deal with rate limits. And they can safely essentially run a public interface because no one's going to connect to it but them. And they just don't want to deal with all this rate limit stuff. Someone just submitted an issue on the repo requesting this, and I thought that was a pretty good idea. So that's the first use case. The second use case is people who run their own private instance of Bch API. I believe this is what ABC is doing, and what some of the fullstack.cash clients are doing, where they're running their own local instance. They want it to run as fast as possible. They don't want rate limits applied to them, but it's publicly exposed, so they need to be able to have basic authentication so that they're the only ones allowed to talk to the system, or the system will only respond to them. And so that's a case. So I already have that case built in, but that's going to get revisited as well, where it's just basic authentication. You're essentially passing in a password in the header, and if you don't do that, the system just won't respond to you. And then the third use case is people who are buying these rate limit tiers on fullstack.cash. So we'll have 20, which will be the free, 100 RPM, which is the first paid tier, and then there will be a 300 and a 500 and 1,000 RPM tiers, and then all the way, and then from there, there's the fourth use case is the or that is the fourth use case. Then there's people who are running private instances, in which case they're using basic authentication. So those are sort of the 5 major use cases that affect the rate limits with Bch API. So I'm going to be refactoring it with those 4 use cases in mind. Yeah, anyways, that's what's coming up. Those are going to affect Bch API. And yeah, so that's pretty much the agenda. That's pretty much what I have to cover today. Let's talk real briefly about NFTs. They're all the rage. Seeing a lot of people are reaching out to me asking about NFTs. And then of course there's pushback because all I have is developer tools and most of those people are not developers, in which case I really just don't have anything for them. Yeah, it's just all the rage. I mean, I think we're in an interesting position, both BCH and ABC, because we have technology for scaling and low transaction fees that are really attractive for this NFT world. And they effectively, like, mechanically under the hood, they're very different than Ethereum, like in terms of how you create them and move them. But their usage is pretty much exactly the same. It's a non-fungible token that you can apply a piece of content to, like a song or a picture, usually hosted on IPFS. And so that's pretty attractive. One of the big bottlenecks I see for both of these chains is that you can't use the SLPDB whitelist feature for NFTs because they're unique. So for fungible tokens, one of the ways you can get away from the scaling bottleneck that SLPDB is currently experiencing is by using the whitelist. So you're essentially telling SLPDB, ignore everything, all the tokens in the world except for what's on this list. And that makes scaling super easy in terms of tokens. But that approach doesn't work for NFTs because NFTs are each unique. And so you can't ahead of time know what the token ID of an NFT is going to be in order to add it to the whitelist of SLPDB. The whitelist is something you have to create prior to syncing SLPDB. So you sort of hit go, and then you can't dynamically adjust that list later on. At least I'm not aware of a way to do that. I have caught wind of someone who is working on like a whitelist feature for NFTs, but I don't have any technical details on that. Have either of you guys heard anything about that? About this being able to apply a whitelist to NFT tokens?
No, I mean, there's all kinds of these little tech intricacies on these tokens for BCH and I guess for ABC as well. But really, the reason that it's getting dominated by Ethereum is because there's not an easy way for people to create and sell them on BCH or ABC. And really, I don't think it would take more than like a simple dev tool. But if you were just able to quickly create a token and then create a market for it, in Ethereum, it's not that easy. You still need a lot of kind of technical ability, but because they've really proved it out, everybody builds them there. So even though you have the same technical capacity on the Bitcoin Cash stuff, the market's not there. So like, yes, there's a lot of technical stuff, and like that's important, and we can worry about it. But I think all we really need to focus dev efforts on, if we want this, like if we want people to care about it, we need some way to make markets and sell it. So I think that should be the technological kind of thrust of efforts. And I don't know, like I complain about this all the time, but really like I could build stuff like that, and here I am not doing it. So it's just kind of how do you start that, right? Because it is like a big upfront commitment. And then once it's going, like you can see what Ethereum looks like, what they've accomplished, what they're zooming around, and even what they're struggling with, right? With like the fee situation and all of these obvious problems that just nobody cares about because they can still make and sell stuff there. So I don't know. I think BCH just needs to figure that out. And the other problems are a lot easier to solve once you got billions of dollars of activity going.
So you said something there that I want to explore because I have my own opinion, but I want to hear your guys' opinion. So one of the unfortunately consistent patterns I'm seeing around SLP tokens is that everybody's focused on like the marketing and the usage of it, and they want to just ignore the engineering details. And so, like Spice and Honk were the first two really like popular SLP tokens, and they continually broke all the SLP DBs in the world. Like they'd cause a problem, we'd all come together and fix it and get it running again, and then they'd kill it again like a week later, just from the sheer volume. And this is the same problem is happening right now with NFTs. Sweet.io is probably, I think, the pushing the state of the art with NFTs on the Bitcoin Cash chain with their phone app, and they're creating a ton of NFTs, and people are trading NFTs, and they've crashed all the SLP DBs in the world a couple times, and it's a good thing because we get stronger every time this happens, even though it literally affects everyone in the world trying to use this technology. And we're going to continue to see this pattern. And so it's like, there's I can see both arguments right here. Like one option is let's just ignore the technical issues and push forward and with what we have and get people excited. And hopefully like through that excitement, there will be enough money and interest entering the space that we can solve these technical issues. Or we can try and solve the technical issues before getting everybody excited about it. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, we're probably going to end up somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be great to just solve them all, but I don't think there's enough interest for people to do it unless there's some serious money on the table. So yeah, like best case scenario, it works, it's flawless, but like even, imagine the hypothetical scenario, like every engineer who's ever worked on BCH stops everything, only works on this problem, gets like a perfect token solution, makes a web page, promotes it, and like nobody gives a shit because the market cap of Bitcoin Cash is negligible compared to Ethereum, and like the tokens have already left us behind. And I feel like to BCH's credit and at ABC as well, like they've always habitually focused on these technical problems, which are important. But I'd say now, like, this has been going on for years and the results aren't good. So I think there needs to be a new approach. I'd say market focused, just something that works, allowing people to sell something. And if it sucks and stuff breaks, well, then those problems are identified and can be fixed, right? Because like right now, it's, we made this hypothetical thing. And like in this scenario, if people liked it, it would break. So we have to fix it. But we can do that forever. The stuff is never finished. So getting people on it, especially where the market is now and where all this growth is coming, like there's a real existential risk to these Bitcoin forks just missing the boat because people don't know about it. People aren't trading on it. People think Ethereum's trade-off is the only trade-off. They don't understand there's another option. So it's not like people should stop working on it, but I think it'd be a lot easier to get attention and dev resources on it if there was a real market.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
What about cash tokens? What is your opinion on this one?
Are you talking about Jason Dresner's
Yes,
proposal?
yes. Can they solve the problems you're talking about?
Theoretically, I think they can, but they require a consensus change to the transaction format. Bitcoin Cash would have to move to, like, I think we're on V2 transaction format. We need a V3 transaction format. So it's a big change to the underlying full node. And
I thought in May they agreed that everybody will do this change, or no? Like, from what I know,
my understanding is there's not going to be any consensus changes in May.
Okay.
I think every full node has come out and stated that, like, there's things they're working on, like, for down the road, but for this May upgrade, my understanding from talking to several of the full node developers is that there's not going to be any consensus changes in May.
Because there was also some proposal about the I think the integer numbers presentation, or what was this, big numbers?
Yeah, general protocols needs bigger integers for their AnyHedge product. And so that's probably, they've said that, I mean, my understanding last time I talked to those guys was that they do not want to push it forward in May. But it's like the main thing they're working on, and they do need to make this change at some point for their business model. To have
because
larger
they already, like, they finished their flip starter, so I think they will have a, like, DEX very soon. I'm not sure if it will be like for NFTs also, but I also know about another maybe one or two, like, almost ready solutions. So it's going, but maybe too slow.
Yeah, well, there are. I've heard. I don't know how seriously to take some of these other projects. Like, I know there's mainnet.cash, and I think the dev behind that is named Pat. And I might be getting this wrong, but I think he's the one who told me that he was working on a whitelist feature for NFTs, a change to SLPDB. And so I might be wrong about who said that, but I'd like to get more info on that and see if there is a solution, because
I don't know. I don't like the old SLPDB idea. Like, in general, it's not on the blockchain. It's like something additionally. So it's wrong from the beginning. But yeah, now we cannot do this without them. So everybody's trying to make as much usage of this as possible.
That, from all the devs that I've talked to in the space, we all kind of feel the same. Whereas, like, yeah, we recognize, like, a serious issue with SLPDB tokens, and we all want miner validated tokens. And the two proposals on the table right now is the group token proposal from Andrew Stone, or the cash token proposal from Jason Dresner. Both of those proposals are incredibly complex, and that's the rub. That's the thing that I think is preventing them from moving forward, is that they're so complex that there just isn't really a lot of healthy discussion around them, because it's so difficult for other people to wrap their minds around the idea. And so there's this, abundance of caution of, like, let's not introduce bugs if we don't fully understand and can debate, like, a new idea. So yeah, I don't know. It seems like it's at a stalemate to me. I wouldn't be surprised if those two token solutions are shelved, permanently, at least don't come out for another year. I seriously don't see them being implemented in the next year. I could be wrong, but it would be nice to have miner tokens, miner validated tokens.
No, because if we put too much effort in in creating a partial solutions, it also will be not very good. Like, I don't know. For example, I was thinking about still about this BSH API. can it be solved on the lower level? Like not to limit so much on the API level, but for example, to have a better hardware, no, not hardware, like a BSHD. I think it have also indexer. Or this the new Fulcrum version, I think, from the previous week. If these things going better, will be still the rate limiting needed?
Yeah, so I would love some help with that. I think BCHD is possibly the solution here, the pragmatic solution, if not the ideal one. In that I think with the indexing turned on, I think it takes between 400 and 500 gigabytes. But then you've got the full node, you've got the SLP indexing built into it. I don't think it suffers from the same issues with NFT tokens as SLPDB does. The unknown in my mind there is scaling. What I've seen in practice is that BCHD, when it falls over, which it does fairly often, it corrupts its database, and then you have to sync from scratch, which means you need to maintain a back. So the way and this is not uncommon in blockchain. So the way I approach this is I build everything around a Docker container, and then I have the database that the Docker container mounts, and that way when the database gets corrupted, I can have a backup. So you're still talking about a couple hours of downtime there, because you've got to like detect the issue, delete the old database, restore the database from like a 300 gigabyte zip file, then mount it, and then you can get back into operation. Then you got to resync from whenever you took the snapshot. So it's far from perfect solution, but it is possible. And I haven't been able to sort of give BCHD with the SLP indexing like the proper focus. I would like to, the one feature, even if BCHD doesn't scale, the one feature that I really like that James Kramer built is that it will prevent you from burning tokens. Like it will, if you give it a transaction that would burn a token, it will reject your transaction and not broadcast it. You have to deliberately tell it, like, yes, I understand that this is a burning transaction and I want you to deliberately burn these. It essentially will check your work and won't let you burn a token, which is like the main pain point in SLP tokens, and one of the main things that would be solved by miner validated tokens. So there's potential there. It's not a silver bullet by any means. And I don't know, there's two scaling issues. There's one is just volume of requests. And I know BCHD has issues with just sheer volume of requests. That can somewhat be solved with horizontal scaling, but then every time you have a replicant of a BCHD, you've just multiplied the amount of effort you have to do to like maintain it and restore these databases when they get corrupted. So that's the first scaling issue. The second scaling issue is as SLP token transactions increase on the blockchain and the number of tokens overall increase, SLPDB is becoming exponentially more expensive to run as a result of that. And I would expect that same pattern to apply to BCHD with its SLP indexer. But I haven't looked into it enough to like verify that. If it doesn't suffer from that solution, I don't know why. I don't know why it wouldn't. So yeah, it's a delicate dance, man.
Yeah. No, I'm just like thinking, okay, because this SLPDB, it's like the big hack with this MongoDB databases and everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, let's see, it's worked until now, but it's like it's magic. Nobody don't know until when this will continue. So
right. I honestly I think that I'm speculating here. Don't hold me to any of this, but I think that there's a number of problems with SLP tokens beyond just whether or not they're manually validated or not. I think that tokens will slowly atrophy from the Bitcoin chains in favor of having tokens on other chains like Avalanche that have native tokens and have this sort of solution figured out and they have like a cash-like experience. However, Avalanche is not going to lower their transaction fees, which I think are about a penny right now, and will increase as the price of Avalanche goes up. And they're not interested in being cash. They're not trying to be cash. They want those transactions to be high so that because the AVAX gets burned, it's not paid as a transaction fee like it is in Bitcoin to a miner. And they want that. They want to burn their tokens. So that's just one blockchain. There's Ethereum, there's other blockchains that have tokens. And also this token idea of putting information in the op return, that is at some point of scale, like, right now we're at 300 transactions per day. By the time, sometime between now and 300 million transactions per day, we're going to have a serious problem with using op return data on chain. It's gonna adversely affect the cash use case. And so I think tokens will get elevated to the next layer up. I think we'll continue to use Bitcoin for its low transaction fees and cash use case. And then I'm working on this IPFS coordination library that could set up a marketplace like between blockchains. You could pay eCash to buy a token on AVAX, and then you could sell that token on AVAX for Bitcoin Cash. And so the negotiation is off chain, and the settlement is on chain, and you can jump between chains. And so I think that this is, from an engineering standpoint, this is where it's going to go. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what the market wants, and the market's going to get what the market wants if it's willing to pay for it. So I don't know how it's going to shake out, but it's not. I think in order to have a healthy discussion, we need to look at what other blockchains are doing, and just like Joey said, it doesn't matter if we solve these problems if it takes so long that we miss the boat. And I think that's probably what's going to happen. I think we're going to miss the boat. But in the meantime, we do have a healthy ecosystem, and we can ride this thing till the wheels fall off.
Yeah. No, we can play with NFTs like even now. So, yeah. I already sell several wives. Joey's wife token. Yeah. So
that's funny. Is there so that Japanese term of what? So for people who don't know what Stoyan's talking about, there's this NFT, the waifus, and waifus is a cartoon woman, and so it's a Japanese term, right? And is it is it based on the English word of wife? I know Japanese people like to take English words.
But it's a very specific type of wife. It's not the real life one. It's guys who think that some anime character is their like partner in life. So to see, but this NFT tokens was interesting. I wrote in fact the code that's generated the NFT, which is behind. It was a SLP faucet, which was generating the usual SLP tokens, and I just make a small modification so it can generate also NFTs. But it was not interesting. It was just like in the beginning, very some small modifications. But Joy had this thing. He found some generator, which is like AI, which is like parsing a huge amount of videos, animes, getting the faces from there and like teaching itself, so it can generate the new faces automatically. Yeah. So he connected this one to this SLP faucet, and it's started generating these animated characters. And people I didn't know there's so many people interested in this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun, right? That's over and over again. That's what I see succeed in this space, is if you can make something fun, you can quickly achieve volumes which strain your infrastructure.
Yeah, it's already like the several Telegram groups. There's like some like indexer which was getting all of the recently generated stuff and like sorting them. You can vote for them. I think there's already some market space already, so it's like big boom.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. That's the nice thing about this is, so I love that we got that level of organic growth, and it's not like Ethereum NFT tokens don't have issues. It's not such a big deal that we have issues on the Bitcoin Cash chain and the ABC chain. I mean, right now, if I was to create an NFT, I would do it on the ABC chain just because the volume's there. I wouldn't have these scaling issues. But yeah, so it's not like somebody has the perfect solution and we're trying to compete with them. We all have issues. So, but yeah, I'm really, I mean, it was the same thing with the Spice token when SLP tokens were first created. Like, it was just fun, and people just used the crap out of them because they were fun. And these waifu NFTs are similarly fun. And I love that they are generating these deep fakes so that every NFT is actually unique, and but they also can't run out of them. They can produce an infinite amount of unique cartoon characters.
Yeah, it's hot. See, it's interesting. That's starting to have already like several like classes of NFTs, and most of the wallets started to try to support this like different classes. Like this, for example, waifus, they're not very good solution because in fact the picture there is not on the IPFS or somewhere. There's icons on the this how to see simple ledger.info server.
It's on the centralized server.
So the document URL is just like a pointer to this one. So it's not perfectly blockchain solution, but it's very popular. So the people start the wallets like Zapit, another one, they start supporting this type of class of NFTs. And I think the recently the Pooker added to this signup.cash added also support for the media on IPFS. So he already supporting these two types of IPFS and this waifu. So
cool, man.
Yeah.
So while we're on this topic, Stoyan, I want to just sort of let you know, give you an update. We've been talking offline about adding better NFT support to wallet.fullstack.cash. And so coming out with that utxo.get function in BCH.js was the first step down that road. I've reviewed your hackathon code for being able to, we've talked about when you hydrate a UTXO, if it's an NFT, have a property that points to the group token. And if it's a group token, have a property that points to its children. And so I have the SLPDB query to do that. And on my to-do items, it keeps getting pushed down the stack by, all these other issues I'm dealing with. But I do have it on my to-do list to add new endpoints to Bch Api to make those SLPDB calls to get those pointers. So that's really like and then we need to build the interface, the user interface for it on wallet.fullstack.cash. So we'll probably do a plugin and probably create a funding proposal for you to do this if you're interested, which I think you are. Is create a plugin for wallet.fullstack.cash that would utilize these new API calls and display NFTs in their own area. And so since we're thinking along those lines, I wanted to just remind you and anybody who watches this video, and Joey as well, that the Permissionless Software Foundation has this specifications repo. And the only spec in here, there's 4 specifications. The only one that's really mature in here is the first one for media sharing. This is what we use for message.fullstack.cash to send encrypted email. But it can be used very generically. It's also how uncensorablepublishing.com syndicates the IPFS websites using the same specification. But on the topic of the waifus and attaching the artwork to an NFT. So there's obviously the IPFS hash, and that's a much better way to do it than a centralized server, because anybody can serve that content. That content can be backed up in Filecoin. That's a better way to do it, but it's still immutable. You still can't, change the data once you create the coin or the token. And so this mutable data specification, let me just open that up because I need a refresher as well. This starts to scratch the surface on how basically, if you create a file using the Bitcoin file protocol, you'll get this transaction hash, and you can put that into that document hash of an NFT token. And if that Bitcoin file protocol points to a file on the blockchain that then points to something that can be changed, now you've created a way for a wallet to download and read mutable data for an immutable token. And so anyways, so there's this specification. So I'd love, more people to think about this, and I'd love for this to become an actual standard. That I plan to use this down the road with wallet.fullstack.cash. But I'd love to see it adopted in other wallets. The other specification is this this JSON ID. This is based on the idea of the lowcat ID, which SLPDB tokens or SLP tokens utilize the lowcat ID. The very first few bytes in the op return signal and what the lowcat ID is. It's really just a CSV file in a GitHub repository. And if a wallet comes across a random transaction on the blockchain that has an op return, and if those first few bytes follow the lowcat ID, then it can look at this CSV file and sort of on the fly get some context as to like what this transaction is intended to do. And so this just extends that idea to SLP tokens, where if you get a token and you leverage that sort of mutable data or being able to point to additional metadata about the token using that document hash field in the token, we could set up a similar thing to the lowcat ID where a wallet could on the fly look up this data and understand like, oh, this token is associated with this other protocol like waifus or concert tickets, or whatever arbitrary app this token's intended to work with. The wallet can kind of like figure that out on the fly by following this breadcrumb trail of data. And so, anyways, I'd love help with these specifications. They're very rough, and they need to be refined. But the main idea is there. So again, there's permissionless software foundation in the specifications. I'd love any feedback anybody wants to give on those.
I made something like this on previous hackathon. It was a negotiation protocol. Yeah, it was a simpler version of this one. And I also read Vinarmani's, if you remember this coin join that we worked about. So it was like some hybrid. When I used the memo.cache protocol, because it's easier to be seen like for humans.
Exactly. But I took the same route. Like I was doing the exact same thing, and then I came up with the spec. But memo is easy for debugging. Yeah,
and I just put everything inside this 200 bytes or something. That was it. It was just like a simple letter to start to show is this the internal or external link. If you start with T, it will be transaction ID after this. If you start with Q, it will be IPFS hash. And you just can put inside this memo several pointers to outside, not blockchain or blockchain data, like this mutable data. So
and that's what's flexible about this is you can put the data either on chain or off chain. That first specification, the media sharing one, it talks about that, how mechanically how you do that.
So it can be used for the music that we are talking.
That way it would. I mean, I think this is how we scale a lot of these ideas. I think this is something that we can do on the Bitcoin Cash blockchain and ABC blockchain that it's not that you can't do it on Ethereum. It's just that this is how we get like Ethereum like qualities in terms of the user experience and being able, like, I mean, the perennial issue is that this stems from is being able to change the token icon after the fact. So, you know, you get a company like USDH and they go through a rebranding, or Tether, you know, they already have all these tokens, you know, circulating in the economy, and it's on an immutable blockchain. So you'd think it would be impossible. But if they follow these specifications, you can actually update the token icon that displays in the wallet anytime you feel like it, without actually impacting, you know, the tokens themselves. And I loved your idea in the hackathon, using NFTs as a decentralized DNS system. And so, like, that's a perfect example of that SLP JSON ID specification, where if a wallet, you know, got one of these, it could tell that it's an NFT, obviously, but with this system, it could actually be like, oh, this is a DNS record.
Yeah.
Okay, well, boy, that went a lot longer than I expected. Thanks for hanging in there, guys. But yeah, good conversation as always. I think we can wrap it up unless there's anything else you guys want to talk about.
No, just gonna enjoy this bull market. Keep all this cool stuff.
Are you looking also on the Bitcoin prices, Bitcoin Cash prices?
I mean, no more than a couple dozen times a day. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm still like newbie in this area. I'm still playing in my, how to see, my incomes are like about $1 or something. I'm very happy when I have it. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's nice being in a bull market. The pressure is off and there's money flowing around, and I'm still waiting for a millionaire to watch these videos and be like, I want to fund that.
Well, hey man, you know, you gotta.
What about this King.com guy? He was talking that he wants to sponsor the people or like groups working on BSH related stuff. Maybe.
Yeah, I hope he follows through with it.
Yeah.
That'd be good. Doesn't necessarily need to be money coming at me. I'd just love to see more money in the system put forth for developers, because there's no end of problems to be solved.
Everybody is just afraid that he will become very easy and soon bored, so he will decide to stop doing these charities.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the first time. I mean, he's
so yeah, it's very, with the millionaires, it's very hard to see, uncertain what will happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, that's why we just got to keep pushing forward, whether it's a bull or bear market. Okay, guys, well, that's a good place to wrap this up. Thanks for joining the meeting. We'll do the technical steering committee again in 2 weeks, and same time next week will be the ComCom meeting, where we'll be talking about the second voting token for the second proposal. Yeah, right on.
Thanks, Chris.
Sounds good.